Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Tuesday, the 14th. So, for many of us, yesterday we worked like a regular day, right? But for some of you, you may have had Columbus Day off. So, we can do this as a secondary Monday. And today I thought we'd talk about how small tasks can really, things that you do on a regular basis, amount to more than big stuff. And when to say no to a customer. And then we'll try to round it out with doing a shop reset. I know that's got you thinking now. So stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it. And yes, this is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Tuesday, the 14th of October, 2025. So, I laid out three different things that I thought I would cover. Hopefully, we have time. But we'll start off with the first thing is things that you do on a regular basis. You know, the what I call, well, what's the right word? When you're using, you do things every day a certain way, right? And they seem minuscule and they seem small, but in the big grand scheme of things, they're actually more important than the big bursts of where you get a lot accomplished, right? Because it's not, for most people, it becomes mundane. It's the tasks that you do that are repetitious. And we can use a lawnmower for an example, a riding lawnmower when it comes in. The repetitious tasks that you should be doing by now is knowing your system of how you're going to go from the front of the machine to the back of the machine and then everything in between, right? You've been doing it for a while, so now you've got it down so it's a science. If you don't do those smaller tasks like that, what happens? You miss things. And then in the big grand scheme of things, they become big things, right? Because if we have to do a shop do over, to me, that's a big thing. Because that's on us. That makes us look like asses, basically. Because we didn't do our job. And I get asked this numerous times over the years. Well, why do we do it this way? Because this way works. I want you to start at the front of the machine, grease the spindles, all right? And you can be doing a number of these things, however you set it up in your mind and in the way you approach things. But when I'm draining the oil from a lawnmower, I'm doing more than just draining the oil from a lawnmower. I'm not just standing there watching oil drain. No, because it takes time. We start every mower outside. If we're going to do a service on it, we let it run for about 5 minutes. That warms the oil up so it doesn't take as long. But when it comes into the shop itself, the hood comes off. That's part one. Unhook the headlights before you yank on it. Set the cowl out of the way so you have full access to the engine compartment. And that's where you take and pull the dipstick, you put it on top of the flywheel. And why do we do that? It signifies that there's no oil in the engine. Anybody in my shop, if they see the dipstick on top of the engine, that means do not start it. So that's a small task, right? You're taking the dipstick and you're putting it on top of the engine. And to many, it's like, well, why would you do that? Well, that signifies that there's no engine oil in the engine. So if you start it up, you're gonna smoke that puppy. That's what I mean by the small things. And then when you do that, you take and you put your oil pan underneath it, pop the plug, let it start running. If you haven't figured it out yet and you haven't been doing it long enough, if you take a garden hose and you cut yourself different lengths, that will fit right over top of the drain plug and extend out however you want it. And for some, the tires, you have to turn the tires all the way to the right so that it cocks it off and allows the oil pan to go in between onto the ground. If you don't, you're going to try a balancing act on the tire and the mower deck, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to dump that oil on the shop floor. Why do I know that? Because we've done that before. That's why we have meaningless tasks of doing just that. Crank the tire all the way over to the right, put your oil pan down. See, now there's two different tasks that are mundane, but if not done, could have severe consequences. Right? So you do that, and you change the oil filter and making sure that you take oil from the either oil drip pan or fresh oil or oil off the old oil filter and push it all the way around the rubber lip that's on that oil filter. Why? Because if you apply it dry, it's going to leak. If you get some oil on it so it makes it wet and sticky, when you tighten it in, it'll give you a good lock. Folks, you don't need to put a crescent wrench or a pipe wrench on the friggin' oil filter to tighten it. You want to go in as hand tight as you can and then just a quarter turn more. We've had to take oil filters off in this shop with a screwdriver and a hammer, chiseling that puppy off. Why? Because somebody thought they needed to put like 200 torque pounds on the oil filter to get it to seal. Actually, if you tighten it too much, you can cause it to leak because the rubber that's in there that's acting as a sealant, if you compress it too much, what's going to happen? It's not going to work any better than if you had it loose. So there's the third thing is you don't think too much about it when you're doing it, but if you don't do it right, it could have severe consequences down the road. Same thing with a fuel filter. If you got a gravity fed tank, you want to make sure you have vice grips on the fuel tank side of the line. If you have a fuel pump, it's less problem. But I clip them anyways. I have a set of needle nose, small vice grips that I just take and I clamp the fuel line, pop fuel, the fuel filter apart, throw a new one on. Same thing with the plugs. The plugs is up to you. Because I think Jason's right too. When it comes to replacing your spark plugs, you don't need to replace them every year. If you're a homeowner and you're running your own machine, I wouldn't worry about it. I don't change my plugs in my machine every year. But as a shop, I've seen machines go out and then the plugs break down. And they were running great when they were here, but the minute they left, then we started having problems. And 2 new plugs solved the problem. So, a lot of the things that are done in my shop are done from experience. And that is replacing the plugs. Is $8 to the customer is what it's going to cost them, $4 a plug. And to me, it's well worth the $8 not to have any problems throughout the summer. And the same thing with fuel. Well, what if the fuel's good? We drain it anyways. If it's a non-running issue, if it runs and drives, we're fine with it. But if it comes into the shop and it's a non-running machine or it's a terrible running machine, I don't take any chances. I drain it and then we drain the fuel tank completely dry. And I mean bone dry. I don't want even a speck of water left in that tank. Okay? And Claude's got pretty good at it over the years. I think he used to steal gas years ago. But he's pretty good about popping a hose into that tank and sucking that puppy dry. We're just putting it into another container. I tried it and I got a mouthful of gas. So it takes experience of how to suck on that hose. But there's another thing. If the machine is running, we're fine. If the machine is a non-run and you got compression, you got fire, you got air, fuel's your culprit. Drain it. I don't care if the customer just said they put fresh fuel in it. That's usually a good sign. And I told you before here on the channel that we've had it where I've drained the fuel, I put fresh that I know is good in it, especially with handhelds, chainsaws, and stuff like that. And then have the customer the following day call me and say it's doing the same thing. And my first question always is, did you run my tank of fuel out? And it's yes. And did you put your old fuel that I told you to get rid of into it? Yes. You can't fix stupid. And I'll explain to them, if you want, you can drain that and go get some fresh fuel mixed. Or you can bring it to me and I'm going to charge you to dump that fuel. And make sure that plug isn't fouled where it's no good anymore. But that's what I mean about certain things that you do that seem mundane, seem repetitious, but you're doing it because of a reason, and in the grand scheme of things, they're more important in diagnosing and fixing and repairing a machine than the big ticket items like a PTO clutch or this or that. Most of the work that we're going to do in the repair shop are going to be the mundane ones. And if you can't get a system down of where it works for you and you're covering all the bases, I don't care if you need a checklist. And we did this early on when we had other mechanics. Is I had a checklist that you had to check off, so I knew that you checked everything involved, right? Those are so important to do compared to the big things. All right, so let's move on to saying no to business. What exactly does that mean, right? It means that anything that can damage your reputation, cause you headache, cause you frustration, is not worth having. I don't care if they're a good paying customer. If they're out there bad mouthing you, do you really want them? And what I have found is the ones that, even though you did a stellar job for them, if they're the ones that are out there bad mouthing you, good chances are that they have bad mouthed other shops, and the other shops have decided to cut them loose. You don't want to be the bottom of the bucket, the bottom of the barrel, however you want to look at it. When you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of choice, right? You're willing to take on just about any business you can get. But are you? Are you willing to take on business that are non-payers? If you're going to do all that work and then not get paid and they leave their piece of crap with you, was it really worth it? And that's what you have to decide early on in business. And if you didn't and you're paying the piper for it, it's never too late to change. And that is to readdress it and say, okay, here is my line in the sand. Things that I will accept and things that I won't accept. And Jason said it, about once you figure out who your ideal customer is, then you can go after them. And that didn't make much sense to me early on in my career. We were going after everybody. But I sat down one day and I said, you know what? I need to define who the customer is that I want, that I'm willing to deal with, that I can deal with. And the no-goes are the no-payers and the ones that will slander you up and down the street, even if you did a great job. So it took me some fine-tuning to find out who my ideal customer was. And once I figured out who my ideal customer was, then I could develop a plan of attack of how to get more of these customers. Where are they hanging out? Where on Facebook groups are they? You know, they're not going to seek you out. You know, just because you open up a shop, even if I used to laugh because when I did web development and server administration, running servers, that I would have a company approach me and want to know if I could do an e-commerce website for them. And the answer was always sure. But what's your budget? I mean, I think my cheapest one was over $5,000, and some were quite a bit more. But I always say, what's your budget? And it never ceased to amaze me of how many people really didn't understand the philosophy behind the internet. And the philosophy is just because you have a website will not bring you tons of business. And this is one of the fears that kept coming to me from my clientele was, I don't think we're ready to take on a bunch of customers just at this moment in time. Okay, so what's the problem with getting the website done? Well, because we can't handle a lot more influx of customers. And I tell them the only one's going to see this website is you and your mother. The only way other people are going to see your website is we're going to have to do advertising. Across Google, Facebook, anything like that. Nobody knows that your website exists, and it's not going to be an onslaught. You're going to get rich quick just because you have a website. Ask anybody that's even made their own websites, because now, AI will make you a website, but it won't guarantee you'll get anybody other than you and your mother. Same holds true for when you open the doors to a shop. You're not going to get an onslaught of customers begging you to do the work for them so they can throw money at you. It doesn't work that way. That's a fairy tale. Wake up. It's time to go to work. But you need to find out who is that customer that comes in, doesn't complain about the bill, doesn't have to pat you on the back and stuff, but is okay with the bill, pays the bill, and your shop makes money. That's the customer you want. And most often the case, that customer isn't the one that's going to go tell everybody about you either. That's in your court. You need to seek these people out. But you can't seek the right people out until you finally sit down and define who is the ideal customer that I want coming to my shop. And then anybody that's looks like a no-payer, be careful here. But if they've got a reputation of being a no-payer or slow payer, you may not want to take them on. But here's the other thing that I found in running businesses for years is that usually the ones that have money look like the homeless. And there's a reason why they still have the money, is because they don't pay. I forgot my wallet, or I'll catch up with you later, and it's not because they can't afford it. That's their forte. All right, so just give that some thought and put in the comments anything you guys might think of to hone in on the ideal customer, because that's what business is all about, is finding out who you want for a customer and then going after them. So lastly, I'm going to talk about a reset in the shop. All right. And what do I call a reset in the shop? All right. Let's say yesterday was a horrendous day. It was terrible. You got two choices. You can either carry that BS over into today, which is a new day, or you can do a shop reset. And that is everybody in the morning, have a little pep talk. Yesterday sucked. We all know it sucked. That's in the past. Today's a new day. Let's go. That's a reset. Coming in as the owner and bitching and complaining about what took place yesterday and then carrying it on is not going to be helpful to you, your staff, customers, to anybody. You need to do a reset every morning. If yesterday was a good day, it's less worrisome as far as doing a shop reset, but still sometimes it's a great way to get everybody's morale back up again. To let's go get them again. And it's not that hard to do. If you're a one-man band, just understand that today's a new day. Nobody's asking you to carry your burdens from yesterday over into today. You would be if you did. So you do have a choice. And the choice is, I'm going to take the better plan of, I can't change what happened yesterday. And we're going to have those days here and there. Understandable. But today's a new day, and this is what I'm going to do, and it's going to be a great day. And if you're in a shitty mood, I'm sorry, when you address customers all day long, if you carried the baggage from yesterday, your customers are going to feel it and sense it, and so aren't your employees. So instead of having one bad day, now you've had two. And if you do it again the third day, now you've had three. You see what I'm saying? But if you come in this morning and say, this is a reset. What happened in the past is in the past. I'm going forward. That's the attitude that you have to have if you want to keep your sanity in the shop. So on that note, put in the comments what you guys think about today's topics and how you go about things. So on that note, you guys enjoy your Tuesday.